Lady Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always an honor to rise in this House to represent our beautiful riding of Nanaimo Lady Smith, a part of our country that is shaped in every way by water. Our sea, our rivers, our swimming holes, our creeks and our wetlands are an intrinsic part of our identity. They're where we fish, farm, and play, where our kids swim in the summer, and where many of us first fell in love with the great outdoors. On Vancouver Island, our water is not only beautiful, it's vitally useful. Properly harnessed, it provides us with clean, renewable energy. It nourishes the crops that feed our families. It incubates our salmon and provides inspiration for our cultural traditions. On Vancouver Island, Madam Speaker, water is fundamental to our lives. Whether it's the Nanaimo River, Haslam Creek, Westwood Lake, or Colliery Dam, our community feels a deep, personal connection to these places. And like most powerful forces, water needs to be respected, revered, and conserved. Because when it rains, it pours for days on Vancouver Island. And when it doesn't rain, the grass turns brown, and the earth cracks, and the landscape becomes tinder just waiting for a match. The chaos resulting from extreme weather in BC threatens not just our livelihoods, but our very lives. Floods, earthquakes and tsunami warnings, droughts and wildfires uproot our lives and threaten to scatter us to the wind. Local farmers tell us about drought and water insecurity, threatening livestock, stressing irrigation system, and creating the conditions for deadly wildfires. On the other side of the ledger, flooding can contaminate soil, erode coastlines, knock out power, and wash away roads. Water is at the center of almost every risk calculation we make. Water is part of our identity, but water can be volatile. Too much or too little can threaten our lives. This brings me to Bill C-241, the bill we're discussing today. One thing that unites people everywhere is our desire to know the weather forecast, along with the reality that it's usually wrong. But we keep trying to predict the weather, and in Canada, doing that, like with many other things, means navigating the complex web of federal and provincial powers laid out in our Constitution. The federal government provides much of our weather forecasting through Meteorological Services Canada. But the provinces and territories are responsible for flood forecasting and issuing flood warnings. The provinces and territories also have jurisdiction over specific applications and emergency management activities within their boundaries. So the federal government predicts the weather, while the provinces and the territories manage the on-the-ground response to the impacts of that weather. What could go wrong, Madam Speaker? What Bill C-241 does, in a way, is it takes a crack at making one flood and drought forecasting strategy out of 13. It requires 3 federal ministers to work together and with the provinces and territories to develop a national strategy around flood and drought forecasting in the hopes of generating the information we need to better plan for these events. This is a noble cause, and as a means to greater collaboration, I support sending this bill to committee, and I applaud my colleague across the aisle for raising these issues and facilitating this important debate. But hope, Madam Speaker, as we all know, is not a strategy. And as an end in itself, this bill falls woefully short. The past few years have shown how vulnerable British Columbia is to extreme weather. And yet, the federal government has not provided the support that farmers, homeowners, and small businesses need to prepare and recover. Floods in BC and beyond have destroyed farms and livestock and left families facing massive repair bills. But federal programs have been slow, confusing, inadequate, and underfunded. Many communities, including those that my colleagues have spoken of today, are still waiting for the promised assistance or have been told they don't qualify because the programs weren't designed for disasters of this kind or scale or scope or whatever. Instead of working with the province to build a faster and more reliable response system, the government has left people to navigate red tape while they're already under enormous financial and emotional strain. Canada's current model of disaster compensation is one where taxpayers cover much of the cost of major flood events, and it's increasingly unsustainable as more and more insurance companies include carve-outs in their contracts that specifically exclude compensation. Better forecasting and mapping could make private insurance more valuable, reducing the burden on the public purse. This is a point worth studying further in committee. If improved modeling can reduce risk and improve predictability, families and small businesses may have more affordable insurance options, while taxpayers may face lower costs after major storms. But it's all a question of implementation and execution. Provincial jurisdiction also needs to be respected. Water management is primarily a provincial responsibility, and communities on Vancouver Island rightly expect collaboration, not intrusion, from Ottawa. It is incumbent upon the government to ensure that coordination does not turn into federal overreach as it does in so many cases. It means making sure the provinces can access shared tools and shared data when they need them. It means ensuring that modeling developed with public funds is accessible, standardized, and usable across the country. That standardization is crucial. Right now, rainfall, soil moisture, lake levels, snowpack, and stream flow data are collected differently across different regions. This makes forecasting harder and emergency response slower. Any national strategy must ensure that provinces, municipalities, Indigenous governments, and industry can all share and interpret data in ways that are consistent and reliable. I want to remind this government about the need to invest in the aging infrastructure that is needed to support major weather events like floods. In my community, Nanaimo Regional General Hospital is the backbone of emergency care not only for Nanaimo, but for much of the island, including in the case of flooding and tsunamis that could come with an earthquake. When roads wash out and communities are cut off, it becomes the critical hub for treatment, evacuation, and coordination. But NRGH's patient tower was built in 1963, Madam Speaker, making it the oldest on the island and one of the oldest of its kind in use anywhere in the country. It is not earthquake-proof, and in a real disaster, whether it's a coastal surge, widespread flooding, or a seismic event, we might just not have it to rely on. Local advocates have done a fabulous job of sounding the alarm, but the Liberal government's latest budget only sets aside $5 billion over 3 years for healthcare infrastructure, including medical schools, across the entire country. It is nowhere near enough to help the provinces rebuild aging hospitals, reduce wait times, or ensure that every Canadian has access to a family doctor. The government can't convince Canadians that $5 billion is a big number, while trying to convince us that $78.3 billion when it comes to a deficit is a small one. All that tells us that this government is not focused on building the infrastructure we need to withstand floods, earthquakes, and tsunamis. If we expect NRGH to serve as a lifeline during the next major flood or emergency, and to provide the safe, modern care every other day of the year, we need this federal government to recognize that nation building includes building hospitals with Canadian lumber, Canadian steel, and Canadian know-how. Madam Speaker, when I meet with families who love their local swimming holes, farmers who depend on predictable water supply, or volunteers restoring local creeks, the message is the same. Our water systems are changing, and we need the tools to understand those changes and better coordinate our response to them. I will support Bill C-241 at second reading so that the committee can examine it carefully, strengthen it, and ensure it remains practical, efficient, and respectful of jurisdiction. Thank you, Madam Speaker.